Get ready for an intense, visceral story, full of suspense, tension, revelations, and a truly disturbing ending. If you enjoy real stories, dark accounts, and psychological horror narratives, this video is made for you. Watch until the end, and try to sleep afterward. I always thought the end of the world would be loud. Explosions, sirens, screams, planes falling from the sky. But when it truly happened, what struck me the most was the silence. My name is Daniel, and if you're hearing this, maybe there's still time. Or maybe you're just listening to the last echo of someone who is already dead. It all started with the Helix Corporation, a pharmaceutical company that promised to cure everything. Cancer, viruses, autoimmune diseases. Miracles in glass vials. What nobody knew was that behind every cure, there was a failed experiment. And behind each experiment, there was something hungry. I worked as a maintenance technician in one of Helix's underground complexes, known only as Sector R. Officially, it didn't even exist. It was like a black hole where secret projects were sent, discarded prototypes, tests that could never see daylight. We were only allowed inside with triple authorization, escorted, and with tracking devices attached to the body. But that night, there was no escort. No supervisors, just an urgent message on my communicator. Critical alert in Sector R, energy failure. Report immediately. The city above wasn't the same anymore. For weeks, there were rumors of missing people. Sirens at dawn, helicopters crossing the sky, and a strange smell in the air, a mix of rust and wet flesh. The streets emptied earlier every night, and the government claimed it was just an aggressive flu outbreak. Lies. We knew it was lies. We always know. We just pretend not to. I went down the main elevator with flickering lights. The digital panel blinked broken numbers, as if the system itself was afraid to descend. The deeper I went, the more my devices lost signal. Radio failing. GPS dead. Phone with no service. It was like descending beneath the skin of the world, where nothing good could exist. When the doors opened, the hallway was completely dark. Only the emergency light, pulsing red, slow and steady, like the beating of a heart. The metallic walls had marks I had never seen before. Deep scratches, as if something with claws had been dragged through there. The corner camera was tilted toward the ceiling, broken. I spoke into my radio. Central. This is Daniel in Sector, a total blackout. No support team. Can anyone hear me? Only static replied. I took a deep breath, adjusted my tool bag on my shoulder, and started walking. Every step echoed through the corridor, a constant reminder I was alone. The air felt heavier, saturated with that metallic stench, like the structure itself was bleeding. In Soma Sports, there was something dark on the floor. It looked like oil. I wanted to believe it was oil. Sector R was formed by a series of circular labs, connected by narrow, long hallways. The heart of the complex was a reinforced core called the Red Nucleus, where the most advanced projects were kept. I was heading straight there. The electrical failure originated from that core. And when something failed at Helix, it was never just a burned cable. Before reaching the first automatic door, I noticed something strange. The biometric panels were unlocked, as if forced to remain open. That never happened. Every centimeter down there was controlled. Every breath was recorded. The feeling that I had stepped somewhere where the rules of the world no longer applied began to grow inside me like nausea. My foot slipped on something viscous, and I almost fell. When the emergency light flashed stronger, I saw it. It was not oil. It was blood, and there were handprints dragged along the floor, as if someone had tried to escape, pulled by something stronger than them. I should have turned back at that moment. I should have run, screamed, abandoned everything. But there's something nobody tells you about terror. It doesn't just paralyze you. It also pulls you. It whispers in your ear that you need to see it through to the end. And that night, I obeyed. I kept walking. That was how my Requiem began. The first time I heard it, it didn't sound real. It was an irregular sound, like someone breathing through a lung filled with water. A wet, scratched noise, coming from somewhere beyond the next corner. I stopped in the middle of the hallway, feeling sweat run down my back, despite the cold, metallic air. Is someone there? My voice came out weaker than I wanted. The sound stopped. Silence returned, heavier than before. I knew there were supposed to be scientists down there, guards, technicians, but there were no footsteps, no voices, no screams. And that, somehow, was worse. The panel of the next automatic door had a broken screen, but still showed an alert. Lock compromised, irreversible access. I pulled the door manually. It dragged across the floor, metal grinding against metal. The emergency light turned on inside the room, revealing Laboratory 3B. Tables overturned, broken computers. Glass on the floor, opened containment cages, some twisted from the inside, as if something had pushed out with absurd force. Broken 4 tubes, leaking a thick greenish fluid, and bodies, 3 of them. A scientist with a torn lab coat, lying on his back, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, mouth frozen in a scream that never ended. His face was wrong. The skin looked like it had begun detaching in plates, as if rotting at an accelerated speed. Next to him, a security guard missing half his throat. The dried blood around him showed that it hadn't been quick. The third body was slumped against the wall, sitting, head tilted to the side. His hands were covered with black lesions spreading up his arms, like burned roots. I was about to turn back when I noticed something else. A message, scribbled on the wall with something dark, probably blood. He woke up. He is nitrogen. Monoxide longer hours. The sound returned. This time, closer. It wasn't a normal breath. It sounded like something trying to learn how to breathe. Failing, spitting air and saliva, increasingly irritated. It came from behind a metal divider at the back of the lab. The red light flashed, and for a second, I saw a moving shadow. Tall, awkward, like a body that no longer fit inside its own bones. My instinct screamed that I needed to flee, but human curiosity is a curse. I took 2 slow steps forward. "Hello, are you injured?" "I can help," I whispered. Something responded, not with words. With a sound halfway between a hiss, a groan, and laughter. A crooked, broken laugh, as if the throat had been torn and clumsily rebuilt. The shadow rose taller, and then a hand appeared over the divider. It was not a normal hand. The fingers were far too long, skin stretched thin, almost transparent. Dark veins pulsed beneath the surface, as if something was moving inside. Them something that was not blood. The nails had become curved blades, yellowed and cracked. That hand groped the metal like someone trying to remember how to use their own body. I backed up, tripping over one of the corpses. The creature seemed interested in the sound. The face appeared over the divider. For a second, I thought it was human. There were recognizable traits. Eyes, nose, mouth. But the eyes were completely milky. No irises, no pupils, just dead orbs, reflecting the red light. The mouth was full of broken teeth, some duplicated, as if new rows were forming inside. The skin around the jaw was torn, muscles exposed, twitching. The smell that followed made me almost vomit rotten, chemical, unnatural. It stared at me, or at least pointed its face. Toward me, the head tilted, studying me like a curious object. Then, deep inside its throat, a grotesque attempt at a word emerged. An, il. Primera frase. It knew my name. Without thinking, I threw the wrench I was holding. It hit the creature's face, and it recoiled with a sharp screech. The sound tore through the room like an alarm. Primera ra ene. Didn't look back. Jumped over bodies, slipped on blood, almost fell, but I kept running. Behind me, I heard the divider collapsing, metal clashing to the floor. Then, footsteps, not human footsteps. Too fast. Too wrong. That was the moment I understood something simple and definitive. The horror down there wasn't an accident. It had a purpose. And somehow, that purpose included me. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more content like this. See you in the next one. I managed to lock the door behind me, but I knew it wouldn't hold long. The structures in Sector R were designed to keep people from escaping, not to protect them from something already inside. The hallway ahead led straight to the red nucleus, the heart of the complex. If the electrical failure started there, that's where I had to go. I needed to understand what Helix had done. I started walking faster, trying to ignore the irregular scratching at the door behind me. The creature didn't attack with constant force. Sometimes it scraped, other times it tapped slowly, almost affectionately, as if it wanted to play before killing me. That was worse. Halfway down the hall was a security room. The door was slightly ajar. Its lock melted as if by extreme heat. I pushed it gently and stepped inside. The monitoring screens were shattered, but a few still showed distorted images of the complex. One showed an empty hull. Another, a destroyed lab. In a third, for just a second, a blur shot past too fast to focus on, just a smudge of flesh and darkness. In the center of the room, a body sat in the main chair, a hole in the side of its head. A revolver lay on the floor, the smell of gunpowder still lingering. The man wore a badge Dr. Enrique Vasconcelos, research director. On his lap, a tablet was still on, its battery nearly dead. The screen displayed a paused audio file titled, "Final Report, Requiem Project." My heart raced. I'd heard whispers about that name. Requiem? A project that would change the world, end human frailty, create something that could never die. And now I understood. They succeeded. They just forgot that something that never dies also never stops killing. I pressed play. Enrique's voice came out low, exhausted, trembling, nothing like the smiling photos on his badge. "If anyone is hearing this, it means we failed, and you have probably already seen the results." I held my breath. The Requiem project was developed to create a biological agent capable of restructuring human tissue at a cellular level, repairing damage, curing disease, slowing aging. It was every scientist's dream. But something went wrong during the first tests. His voice cracked, like he was reliving it. The serum didn't just regenerate, it rewrote. Cells began multiplying uncontrollably, forming new structures, redundant organs, extra nerves. Tess Subhex stopped being human. But the worst wasn't that. Static cut through the recording. We discovered Requiem was not just biological. It had a pattern, an informational signature behaving like a mimetic virus. Those who spent too much time near the infected, even without physical contact, began having the same dreams. Voices, dark corridors, something calling their names. We believe the serum developed a rudimentary consciousness, a singular will, distributed in every infected cell. It wasn't a virus trying to survive. A long pause. It was a curse trying to spread. A chill ran down my spine. I remembered the creature saying my name, the way it looked at me, as if it already knew me. Enrique continued. The first subject with advanced mutation signs was Patient Zero, but he wasn't a stranger. He was an internal volunteer, a Helix employee, someone who trusted us, and when the transformation completed, his human features vanished. Yet he still knew things, names, routines, fragments of memory, as if the curse had copied part of his mind and mixed it with its hunger. I looked at Enrique's lifeless face. Certain he spoke of someone he'd known well. "We tried containment," sighed Enrique, his voice breaking. "We sealed sectors, burned labs, sacrificed colleagues, but every fragment of infected flesh, every blood droplet, every breath from that being carried Requiem within it. It wasn't a single monster." Another pause. In the background, I heard screams, alarms, something slamming into a wall. Sector R was locked. The city above received a weakened version of the serum mixed into routine medications. A mass dispersion test. Helix wanted to see how Requiem behaved in small doses, on a large scale. They thought they could control it. They wanted to call it progress. My legs went weak. The city, the sickness, the disappearances. "This is no longer a disease," Enrique whispered. "It is a presence. It spreads through flesh, air, and fear. The more you think about it, the stronger it gets. The more you try to understand it, the deeper it sinks. If you are in this sector, if you heard this, it probably already knows you exist. A massive crash sounded from the recording. Something broke through a wall. Screams. Gunfire. Then, Enrique's final words. Requiem is not an experiment. Silence. It's the end. The audio stopped, and at that exact second, as if on cue, I heard something in the hallway outside. Scratching. Heavy, impatient. Like something was figuring out which door I had gone through. I shut off the tablet and stuffed it into my backpack. I needed proof. Someone above had to know what Helix had done, but deep inside, I already knew. There was no above that was safe. The curse had already risen long ago. As I moved to the door, the emergency light flickered one last time. For a split second, the creature's shadow passed through the gap, slow, as if sniffing, searching. And for the first time, I felt something different from fear. I felt the absolute clarity of being hunted. I slipped out through the side door of the security room, into a maintenance duct that almost nobody even remembered existed. I knew it because I'd spent countless hours in there, repairing wiring, breathing in dust, and listening to the distant, muffled echoes from the labs. Now, that same dark, narrow tunnel was my only way forward. I crawled through, the metallic scrape of my knee pads the only sound, trying to push away the feeling that at any moment, something was going to grab my ankle and pull me back into the blackness. The air grew hotter, heavier. The usual chemical smell was mixed with something else. Something animal. It wasn't just the scent of blood and decay. It was something disgustingly alive. In some sections, dark stains spread along the duct walls like a strange mold. I accidentally brushed against one, and the texture felt wrong. It wasn't dead matter. It was moist, and it seemed to pulse under my fingers, as if it were growing. I yanked my hand back, a wave of nausea hitting me. Requiem wasn't just spreading through people. It was spreading through the very structures of the complex, infecting the place as if it needed a body far larger than human flesh. When I finally emerged, I was on the red nucleus level. It was a massive circular chamber filled with containment tanks. Thick cables snaking across the floor, and digital panels flashing with failure messages. In the center of the room was a huge, reinforced glass sphere, now completely shattered. Its interior was smeared with a dark fluid and bits of indescribable organic matter. The label on a nearby panel was chilling. Requiem subject. 0. Broken glass glittered under the emergency red lights. Among the shards, I saw dried pieces of flesh that had been dragged toward the exit. It looked like whatever was inside had burst out and scattered in every direction, searching for a more suitable host. There were more bodies here. Some still wore protective masks, half covering their faces. Others were no longer identifiable. They were twisted into impossible shapes, limbs tangled, rib cages burst open, jaws dislocated, as if their bodies had forgotten how to be human right in the middle of transforming. Then I heard a familiar sound. The hiss of a radio. I looked to my right and saw a man leaning against a column. A security officer. He was breathing, but each breath was a ragged, painful struggle, as if his lungs were being sliced from the inside. His right arm was horribly deformed, covered in dark, swollen veins and pulsing pockets that looked ready to burst. "Hey," I said, approaching cautiously. "Are you still with us?" He lifted his head with a huge effort. His eyes still had a spark of lucidity, but something was wrong with his pupils. Dark specks were spreading outward from the center. "Get out," it choked out, coughing up thick, black blood. "You don't understand." "What happened?" I asked, kneeling beside him. "Requiem. How did it get out?" He let out a choked, hopeless laugh. Escape, it didn't escape. It was released. A cold dread washed over me. "What do you mean?" "Orders. From the top." He coughed again. Drops of his blood hit the floor and sizzled, smoking slightly as if they were acidic. "They wanted to see how it behaves without containment. Said the city needed a shock of evolution." He tried to grab my shoulder, but his fingers spasmed uncontrollably. His skin cracked open, revealing a dark, pulsating flesh underneath, like a giant larva trying to hatch. "Your maintenance, right?" he murmured, his voice breaking. "The system, it's still partially active. If you can get to the core control room, you can start the total burn protocol." "Total burn," I repeated, my throat suddenly dry. "Everything," he whispered. "This floor, the city above, Helix's entire underground network, everything connected, will be purified." The weight of his words felt crushing. They had a protocol not just to destroy the complex, but the entire city if their experiment went wrong. And to Helix, all of this was just acceptable collateral damage. "If you don't," the god continued, "there will be no place left untouched." He started to shake violently. His eyes rolled back into his head. The deformed arm expanded, and I could see something inside pushing his bones outward, tearing the skin. I scrambled backward. "Run," he gasped, his voice twisting into a growl. "Run. Before I'm no longer me." He let out a scream, a sound that was no longer human. His arm exploded in a shower of blood and tissue, and a new limb burst forth, covered in bone plates with 3 enormous claws at its tip. His chest split open into a gaping maw of fangs, as if dozens of mouths were trying to be born. The transformation was too fast to even process. Primera, dra, in. Behind me, I heard the scrape of claws on the floor, carving deep tracks into the metal. The creature that was once a man was now scrambling up columns and across walls like a monstrous insect, a chorus of impossible sounds spilling from it. I burst through a side door and slammed it shut, locking it manually and pushing with all my strength. The claws hammered against the other side, shaking the metal. But each impact seemed to be changing the door itself, not just with force, but by infecting it, rewriting its very structure. I finally understood that we're no longer humans and monsters. Everything was merging. The curse didn't distinguish. It just saw matter. Flesh. A surface to spread on. I kept running, but a part of me knew, the moment I breathed that air, touched those walls, heard that dying man's voice, something inside me had already been marked. I wasn't transformed yet, but something had begun. The control room of the red nucleus was at the lowest level, hidden behind a narrow corridor. As I went deeper, it felt like walking under a blood-stained altar, straight into the profane heart of some dark ritual. The alarms were already dead. There were no mechanical sounds, only the unsettling noise of dripping, crackling, and whispers. At first, I thought it was just echoes bouncing through the air ducts. But as I kept walking, I realized the whispers had a rhythm. Slowly, they started to form words. "Daniel." I froze. The voices seemed to come from everywhere, from the walls themselves. "Daniel, come back." My heart started pounding. I knew, rationally, this had to be the exposure effects. The doctor had warned me that Requiem was also an informational virus. It messes with your dreams, your thoughts, creating hallucinations. It had to be hallucinations. "Probably you came," a clearer voice said, cutting through the whispers. It came from right in front of me. Standing before the double doors to the control room was a silhouette. Tall. Thin. Motionless. As I got closer, I saw the face. My world shattered. It was my older brother. Lucas. Or at least, what was left of him. What stood before me was a cruel parody of the man I once knew. Months ago, Lucas had volunteered for a Helix health program to earn some extra money for our family. Then, he just vanished. The company told us he'd been transferred out of state. My mother cried for weeks. I swallowed my anger and just kept working. What else could I do? But now, I knew the truth. He had never left. Lou Keese. My voice broke. He smiled. Or, he tried to. Part of his face moved, but the rest was rigid, like it had been rebuilt. His skin was a horrifying mix of normal patches and dark, raised clusters of veins. One of his eyes was human. The other, milky white, just like Patient Zero's. "You took your time, brother," he said. His voice was a disturbing blend of memory and distortion, like it was echoing from the bottom of a deep pit. "I was waiting for you." My heart completely shattered. It was him, the way he spoke, that ironic tone, the familiar tilt of his head. But it wasn't him. Something was watching me from behind his eyes, as if his face was just a mask worn by another mind. What did they do to you?" I whispered, my knees shaking. He took a step forward. His movements were disturbingly fluid, his joints bending too far, too easily. "Requiem," he murmured. "They gave me a gift, took away weakness, limits, death. Now I can be many things, in many places. Primera, ca, en, feel everything." The veins on his neck pulsed, and something wriggled just beneath his skin, like worms trying to escape. "You're suffering," I said, tears burning my eyes. "This isn't life. It's torture," he left. It was a strange, broken sound. "You still think like a human, Daniel. They taught you to fear change. But look around." He spread his arms, and for a terrifying second, the walls seemed to pulse with him. "The world above is already sick. People are empty, just walking in circles, dying slowly. Requiem will correct this. Correct it by killing everyone," I shouted. The whispers around us grew louder, angrier. "It's not death. If you continue," he replied. "I continue. In every flesh I touch, in every mind I see, in every nightmare I plant." A tear rolled down my cheek. "Lucas, I just want this to end." He sighed, disappointed. "It will end, brother, but not the way you want." Behind him, the control room doors opened on their own. Inside, I could see the primary panels, still active, with the words "Total Burn Protocol" flashing in bright red. He turned toward it, then looked back at me. "You really think you're the only one who wants to end this?" he asked. "Requiem isn't afraid of fire. Part of me will die, but enough will survive. Scattered, diluted, in the city, in the world. Burning everything will only speed up the next stage." As he spoke, the skin of his arms split open, revealing new, spiked bone structures growing outward. He stepped closer, and the floor seemed to vibrate with his presence. "I won't let that happen," I said, forcing myself to sound certain. "I'll activate the protocol. I'll destroy this place. I'll free you from this. Even if I have to estar may." And for a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of pride behind the distortion. "Then come, Daniel," he whispered, and for a split second, it was his voice. Only his. "Show me you can face me." I ran toward the control room, not to escape him, but to reach the panel before the creature caught me. His claws scraped the ground behind me, throwing sparks. The mouths all over his body whispered like a choir, saying things I refused to understand. As I crossed the doorway, it began to close automatically, but one of his limbs jammed into the gap. The claws pierced metal like paper. I had seconds. The main panel glowed ahead, full of red alerts. Total Burn Protocol. Dual. Confirmation required. The system needed 2 codes. Director, I pulled Enrique's tablet from my backpack, my hands shaking. I already had the director code. My own code was memorized. You're not going to do this, the creature growled, a voice that was half Lucas, half something else. I typed as fast as I could. Every keystroke felt heavy. The claws bent the door. One of the creature's eyes appeared through the tear, starting at me. It still recognized me. It was still him, somehow. Director code accepted. Now mine. As I typed, flashes of my life with Lucas passed through my mind. Childish fights, late-night video games, the time he defended me at school. Advice I ignored. I knew that somewhere inside that twisted mass, trapped and conscious, my brother would not want this to continue. Maybe activating this protocol was the last mercy I could offer. Technician code accepted. The panel trembled. Confirm total burn. This will result in the complete destruction of the complex and the urban area above. The claws ripped a huge hole into the room. Metal flew inside. The creature forced its body through, crushing bone, reshaping its own limbs, molding itself to the gap like living clay. I had to press yes. But my hands stopped, because for an instant, among the ocean of flesh and bone, Lucas's face emerged with perfect clarity. He looked at me without distortion, without echo. You don't have to die here, brother, he whispered, his voice clean. Requiem can accept you. You can come with me. Pain ends. Fear ends. You won't be alone. The mouths repeated in a chorus. Not alone. Not alone. Not alone. I felt the weight of the button under my finger. The cold metal panel, sweat dripping from my palm. Above ground, an entire city full of unsuspecting lives. People working, children sleeping, couples arguing over trivial things. All of them equally vulnerable to the curse Helix had unleashed. If I activated the protocol, I would burn them all. But if I didn't, I would deliver them to something far worse. I'm sorry, I whispered, not knowing to whom. I pressed yes. The panel confirmed with a harsh tone. Total burn protocol initiated. Time until impact. 3 o'clock minutes. 3 minutes. The creature froze. For a moment, all the voices stopped. The corridor itself seemed to hold its breath. Do you think this will stop us? Lucas's face asked. Sadness in it now. You really think fire can erase? An idea? I don't know, I answered, my throat tight. But maybe I can prevent it from leaving. He started at me, and I saw something like pride flash over his distorted features. Always underestimated you, he murmured. Stubborn brother. Then something unexpected happened. The creature backed away. Instead of trying to kill me, it retreated down the hall, climbing the walls, spreading through the structures like a living network. It was trying to occupy as much space as possible before impact, to spread itself thinner, wider. The whispers returned, stronger, vibrating through screws, concrete, and wiring. The timer ticked down. 2 minutes. 1 minute. I could try to escape. There was an emergency elevator, a tunnel to the surface, but I knew it wouldn't be fast enough. And deeper down, Iknu, Primera wa SNAT, the same person anymore. My hands trembled, my chest burned. My heartbeat sometimes sounded like it was outside my own body. I had been marked, maybe infected. If I escaped, I might take the curse with me. At 50 seconds, I sat on the floor beside the panel. I activated the room's audio transmitter, linking it to an external line, a faint chance it would reach the world above. My name is Daniel, I began, my voice calmer than I felt. If anyone hears this, know that Helix did not fail it. City's what's happening below isn't an accident. It's a decision. They call it evil. I call it the end. In short sentences, I described what I'd seen. Project Requiem, Patient Zero, the curse spreading through flesh, air, and fear. And in the middle of it all, I spoke of Lucas, not as a monster, but as my brother. If the fire isn't enough, I concluded, with the timer at 10 seconds. Then whoever hears this will have to choose. You either hide or you face it. But know one thing, Requiem isn't just a virus. It's an idea, a presence, and now you already know its name. I ended the transmission, closed my eyes. The earth shook. The impact came like the roar of an enraged god, tearing everything apart. The ground shattered, walls crumbled, and heat flooded the room like a burning sun. I felt my body disintegrate. There was pain, but also silence. In the final flash, I saw Lucas's face, clean, like before, smiling. Then nothing. They say that weeks later, among the smoking ruins of what remained of the city, rescue teams found fragmented recordings scattered in the debris. Cut audio, static, bits of a voice, speaking of a virus, a curse, a requiem. Some listened. Some believed. Others simply ignored it. But since then, reports began to appear. People hearing whispers in the walls of new buildings, hospital workers seeing patients moments before dying, calling out a name they'd never heard. Lucas's children drawing creatures with many eyes, many mouths, saying they dreamed of the end. But the end had a voice. And in certain dark alleys, where the silence is just a little too heavy, people walking alone swear they hear it, right by their ear. A whisper. The requiem is not over. And maybe, as you hear this story, as you think about it, as you feel that shiver creeping up your spine, maybe you've already been noticed, too. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to follow for more.